wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya mursalin sayyidina Maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi washabihi ajmain. Amma ba'du. Praise us for the grace of Allah Subhanahu wa taala. We are still given the opportunity to meet virtually today in this international webinar with the theme Islamic Political Economy and Finance in the Post-Coronavirus World, Challenges and Opportunities. Salawat and prayers may remain devoted to the Prophet Muhammad and his family, companions, and all Muslims around the world. Hopefully by multiplying blessing to him, then all of us as the people get syafaat in the hereafter. Amin ya rabbal alamin. Appreciation goes to the distinguished speakers who all gather in MES for the willingness to spend time in the midst of their busy schedule to share their valuable knowledge with Islamic economic and financial enthusiasts. I also appreciate MES UK who organized the event today. On this good occasion, may we begin by saying Happy Eid al-Fitr 1441 Hijrah. Taqabbalahu minna wa minkum. May it bring peace, happiness, and prosperity to everyone. Distinguished speakers and participants, as we all aware, the world is suffering COVID-19 pandemic, which infected millions of people and claimed almost 500,000 of people. Unprecedented measures have been in place to prevent transmission, such as travel ban and social distancing. These extraordinary measures in turn affected and weakened the global economies, both the supply side and production side, which puts pressure on performance of the real sector and triggers unemployment surge all over the globe, including Indonesia. The released GDP data of several countries, including those incorporated in the Organization of Islamic Countries, OIC, in the first quarter of 2020 has confirmed such a decline in economic growth, which is worse than expected. In the case of Indonesia, we can see the pressure is mounting from the country's economic growth in the first quarter of 2020, which sharply decreased to 2.97% year-on-year from 5.07% year-on-year in the first quarter of the previous year. Numerous international institutions also project that economic growth in majority of countries will experience recession. The world economy is expected to grow negatively by -5.2%, according to World Bank. It even contract to -7.6% if there is a second wave coronavirus, according to Oecd. Not only globally, the COVID-19 pandemic will also impact national economy, especially in Q2. The weakening of market optimism in May 2020 on economic condition continues as reflected by declining business activity. Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, manufacturing has been in contraction zone in the past 3 months, May 28.6 and April 27.5, due to the drastic decline in production and demand. Consumer Confidence Index in May 2020 fell to the level of 77.8%. Retail sales growth experienced a contraction. April -16.9% year-on-year and March -4.5% year-on-year. Decline in export and imports, especially in the oil and gas sector and machinery and transportation equipment. Pandemic-19 also disrupt various economic and business activities in almost all sectors, including economic and Sharia business activities, such as halal tourism, global halal industry chains, and Islamic finance. As of April 2020, total Sharia financial asset in Indonesia, exclude Sharia shares, were recorded at 1,496.88 trillion rupiah, or slowing down at 8.37% year-on-year compared to December data. December 19, 13.85 84% year-on-year. Distinguished speakers and participants, to prevent further deterioration, mass bankruptcies and massive layoffs that could potentially disrupt financial service sector stability, various anticipatory measures has been taken, both in terms of fiscal, monetary to the financial sector. It even includes unconventional policies which may not be taken substantially under normal conditions. Some of the steps taken are similar to those taken during the global financial crisis. The Ministry of Finance has disbursed fiscal incentives as well as increased and refocused government budgets to support the real sector and the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Likewise, Bank Indonesia is loosening liquidity on the financial markets. OJK certainly does not remain silent. Anticipatory policies were also issued, including reducing volatility in financial markets through various policies in maintaining investor confidence and stabilizing the market. Give respite to the real sector, the real and informal sectors to be able to survive in the COVID-19 pandemic period through the relaxation of credit financing restructuring. Providing relaxation for the financial service industry so that there is no need to form additional reserve for non-performing loans due to impact of COVID-19, which can reduce capital through a relaxation in determining the quality of credit for one pillar and relaxation of restructuring. To be able to survive and rise from the effect of COVID-19 pandemic, the government and authority will not be able to push the economic alone. The successful implementation of this policy, of course, requires the role of us all, including Islamic economic and financial actors. Although the market share of Islamic economy and finance is relatively small, with the market share of Islamic finance only reaching 8.94% of the total financial asset in Indonesia, but I'm confident the Islamic financial industry is very close to the real economic activities, which is strongly affected by economic downturn due to this COVID-19 pandemic. Here I see the term raised today is highly relevant, where we need to take a role and take steps in efforts to revive the economy in the post-coronavirus world, in particular in Indonesia. Distinguished speakers and participants, as the chair of the Sharia Economic Community, or MES, I have a high expectation that MES can contribute in developing the economy. MES is an organization that focuses on Islamic economy and finance, which spread in various regions domestically and globally. MES has a vision to be the foremost organization in realizing new Sharia economic order in Indonesia. For this reason, the COVID-19 pandemic actually becomes the right momentum for MES to have a greater role in generating new economic currents in the Indonesia community. This vision is achieved through 5 missions. First, support for community development programs. The second, quality improvement of Islamic economic actors and enthusiasts. The third, actively contributing to increasing the participation of Islamic financial institutions. Fourth, international organization development. And 5, capacity building for small medium enterprises. In line with its mission, MES is conducting webinar today to support the improvement of the quality of Islamic economic enthusiasts in developing the economy in Indonesia. Distinguished speakers and participants, to realize the Islamic economic order amid the COVID-19 pandemic, 3 strategic steps are needed. First, the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic needs to be minimized, both on health aspect and on the socioeconomic aspects. COVID-19 disease prevention protocol must be enforced so that this pandemic ends quickly and does not last longer. Second, support for the informal sector and SMEs is also needed so that the flow of the economy can continue to run. Meanwhile, the poor need to be given assistance so that they can make a living. In this case, the utilization of zakah, impact, sadaqah, and wakaf, and other economic and other Islamic social finance institution is crucial in maintaining the economic resilience of the people in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemics. Alhamdulillah, MES actively takes a role here. Through collaboration with several institutions and synergy of the MES network in the region and regions, MES has distributed health facilities and social assistance in several cities in Indonesia. In the financial sector, where I am entrusted as chair of OJK, the Financial Service Authority, Indonesia Financial Service Authority, we together with the government and Financial Sector Stability Committee provide relaxation to the financial services industry, including Syariah sector. This is manifested in the form of relaxation of financing restructuring policies for Syariah banks and other Syariah finance companies, as well as supporting the implementation of margin or interest subsidized for ultra micro and MSME loans. Distinguished speakers and participants. The second strategy, we must encourage the creation of breakthrough and innovation so the economic and business activities can run again, especially during the period when COVID-19 vaccine has not been found yet. This period is called new normal. In doing so, there is a need for formulating the new normal protocols in various fields of halal and Syariah sector. First, for commercial activities, halal tourism, halal food, and Islamic finance, so that they can recover quickly and are not abandoned by consumers. The second, for educational activities, Islamic boarding school, or we call it pesantren, and other Islamic educational institution, so that they can continue educational activities. Moreover, the use of technology must be utilized to support the economic and business sectors, including more efficient business processes, wider reach, and increasing financial access for the community. Especially during this pandemic, many activities and financial transactions are carried out through digital platform. For instance, that mobile banking, online investment or trading, e-payment, as a commerce developed that changed people's shopping behavior. Recent survey shows e-commerce is the fastest growing channel compared to other channels. For instance, modern market and the digital market. In addition, another survey shows that 70% of mobile users have been registered as new user of digital application as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. This is a huge opportunity for the halal industry to go digital. Technology innovation is also one of the main agendas of Islamic financial service institution to be able to provide products and services according to the need of the people in the digital era. Meanwhile, MES also has programs that utilize digital platforms, including Islamic Economic E-Learning or ELSA as the leading online learning platform from MES. As of May 2020, ELSA's enrollment in the process reaching almost 2,000 participants. Various e-talk show activities such as Syariah Online Talk and Syariah Webinar Series, which can be followed on MES social media. Syariah Profession Certification is the process of being online. Distinguished speaker and participant. Finally, the development of Islamic economy cannot be done alone. Synergy and collaboration of various parties are needed, both from the government, business actors, academics, community organizations include MES, as well as Syariah economic and financial enthusiasts themselves. Among them, the integration between the halal industry and the Syariah financial service sector is expected to encourage The development Sharia economic and financial ecosystem is a greater pace. In addition, the support of Muslim youth generation to continue making halal products and services lifestyle is also valuable catalyst for the development of Islamic economic and finance. With greater synergy of various parties, I am confident that Indonesian economy can revive, where Sharia economics and finance continue to increase its contribution in improving the welfare of the wider community, which ultimately also support national development. This is distinguished speakers and participants. I hope that we discuss in this webinar will get rewards from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and can be a way for accelerating Sharia economic and financial growth in Indonesia. Thank you. I'm pleased to answer the question, but since Pak Wimbos is not in this room, so I've finished my speech. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Wimbos Santoso, PhD, Chairman of Sharia Economic Community. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Mr. Jadi, on behalf of Professor Wimbos Jadi, thank you very much for delivering the keynote speech. The direction is pretty much clear. This coronavirus pandemic can give us opportunities for Islamic economics and finance to show that we have the ability to be a part of solution in terms of rescuing, innovating, as well as collaborating with other institutions as well. Okay. Thank you very much again. The next speaker will be Professor Mehmet Asutai. But before I move on to Professor Mehmet, I would like to inform for everyone who has a question, just put your question into the chat room, and then when it is the time, I will deliver the question to our distinguished speaker. All right, so okay, so Professor Mehmet Asutai is a professor of Middle East and Islamic political economy and finance at Durham University. He also sits in the expert board of Masyarakat Ekonomi Syariah United Kingdom. Professor Mehmet has a BA in public finance from the University of Istanbul, Turkey, MSc in public finance as well in the same from the same university, postgraduate diploma in economic and social policy analysis from University of York, United Kingdom, MA in economics of public policy from Department of Economics of the University of Leicester, United Kingdom, and PhD in political economics from the same university, University of Leicester. He has extensive scientific publications in many high-ranked journals. Among the latest co-author papers of him are liquidity risk exposure and its determinants in the banking sector, a comparative analysis between Islamic conventional and hybrid banks, which was published in GIFMIM ABS3 2020, and then the higher ethical objective Maqasid al-Sharia augmented framework for Islamic banks, assessing ethical performance and exploring its determinant. This was published in Journal of Business Ethics, ABS3, 2019. So, Professor Mehmet, the room is yours, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's good to be with the MES UK. Last year we had a conference in Durham, last year, August. It was an enjoyable event. We had quite a number of different colleagues from different parts of the world presented their papers. And under the conditions of the new norm, as we call it, COVID-19, to be able to join you all through this webinar, it is indeed a pleasure. And it is, I'm further pleased to be here present with Professor Antonio, as well as unfortunately the chairman of the Oecd couldn't make it, but we enjoyed his written statements. and demonstrating the difficulties and challenges that the economies in general, but the Indonesian economy in particular, has been going through under the circumstances of COVID-19. Indeed, COVID-19 demonstrated another phase of crisis to all of us. But the crisis that we have been living somehow as part of the capitalist economies all over the world is not something as limited with current health crisis, but we have been facing similar crises throughout the years, even perhaps the beginning of the 20th century. So beginning of 20th century, similar pandemic, but also what is important as part of the political economy, because we are debating political economy, as part of this political economy, different crises emerge in different parts of the world or globally, and demonstrating the systemic risk we have in the current system. So even those of you who are quite young, I can see here, in your lifetime, you have witnessed 2008 financial crisis, but then a number of local crises, as well as the SARS about 10 years ago, another health crisis, and now the global pandemic. And that is the crisis happening one after another is an indication that there is something wrong in the system that we are forced into living. In other words, the existing political economy that we all share, unfortunately, all over the world, regardless of our ontological differences and norms, which has been imposed by the global political economic order, it indicates that it creates systemic crisis, which affects different aspects of life, depending on where it emerged. So either an economic crisis or a financial crisis or health crisis. We had food crisis, again, around 10 years, 15 years ago. You have the energy crisis, and etc. And therefore, it's a clear indication that the current system, current political economy, as part of the global political economy, in particular since 1979 Washington Consensus, which imposed all over the world the neoliberal policies under economic and financial liberalization, is not necessarily delivering what is expected. In other words, neoliberal policies has been creating different tensions in different aspects of life, and therefore either locally or globally, everyone has been suffering. Of course, this is very much related, perhaps a response needed for Fukuyama after the Washington Consensus 1979, coming up with the idea that this is the end of history. The end of history implying that the world has come to an end in finding a particular political economy, and that political economy neoliberalism, and that's the end of the history. Since then, since Fukuyama wrote his book in 1992, the end of history hasn't come yet, but what we have, the systemic crisis produced by the end of history slogans has engulfed different parts of the world, different sectors of society, but in the end with COVID, the entire world is engulfed into this particular crisis. Some of you might consider that, well, this is a health crisis. What is to do with the neoliberal policies? And that brings us the importance of political economy debate. Because unfortunately, since the beginning of the 20th century, with the marginalist group becoming hegemonic in our understanding of the disciplines, including economics as a discipline, they have divorced different sectors of life from the rest. So economics was divorced, and that has been the case from sociology, from anthropology, from politics, and etc. So they created a compartmentalized knowledge areas, and those knowledge areas we have been working on as isolated areas, a piecemeal analysis, partial analysis, whether we are doing economics, finance, politics, sociology, and etc. by divorcing each component from the other. And therefore, unfortunately, we lost the political economic perspective, the larger perspective, the systemic perspective to be able to locate. And therefore, current crisis, the health crisis, it sounds a health crisis, but at the same time, it is produced and it has been produced by the current economic system, the way it created the consumption culture, the way it created terribly disinvestment in health, for instance, that we have been gone through. For instance, looking at countries, most countries, and in particular the Western countries, have been very much successful, unfortunately, in creating technologies through which they could easily wipe out the world with their nuclear bombs in a second. So they have been crazily successful in managing to devastating the world and killing people. Yet the same countries have failed even to provide face masks to the health workers in their own countries to be able to have an effective working environment so that they could tackle the challenges of coronavirus in front of them. So therefore, looking at, on the one hand, we have this huge machinery, produces machines to kill people in a second, yet they have failed to produce as a simple face mask to be able to protect their own health workers. And that directly indicates that in our understanding of the economy, political economy, the certain segments of the society and the certain sectors of the society have been entirely disregarded, has been not considered as a variable, if I use the word through their language, as a variable in their analysis. The human has been taken out of the function, the human well-being, human lives have been taken out of the equation, unfortunately. Therefore, everything has been running around capital and capital gains and the corporate values and corporate value maximization type of an understanding at the expense of human values. And this is a human well-being in particular, but not only human well-being, the well-being of other stakeholders that have been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, including environment, for instance. And therefore, the challenges that we have in front of us is a global systemic challenge. And unfortunately, because of the global order, each country in each locality has not been able to challenge the existing global order to be able to develop something uniquely reflecting the value system of their own societies. For instance, one of the things that I really enjoy with the Indonesian circles when I got the conferences in Indonesia, whoever the main speakers from, including the politicians, their references to Islamic economics being the Rahmatul Alamin. So that gives you a particular definition what economics could be, Rahmatul Alamin. Okay, that tells us that this is not a simple economics matter, or is not a simple matter for Muslims, or not a simple matter for Indonesia, but Alamin, to global blessing. So that global blessing suggests that there is a political economy understanding here. But before going, perhaps, in order to look at the challenges, while we have these challenges around us, but at the same time, what we have seen, perhaps in the, at least in our realms, within the Islamic political economy, important indications have emerged through this pandemic. Because until the pandemic, or still, of course, the political economy of neoliberalism has suggested us that human beings are self-maximizers. We are all, we have to be stoicistic. In other words, we have to consider only our own welfare, our own betterment, our own utility, regardless of others. In other words, stoicism as a philosophy, as the heart of the neoclassical economics, suggests that you cannot help anyone else unless you are better of yourself. So therefore, the essentialization of very much this homo economicus, egoistic individual. But what is important as part of the Islamic political economy, it is important for us, but it is for neoliberal political economy. With the pandemic, it has become very much clear that my existence and my sustainability as an individual is directly linked to well-being of other people. If other people are not well off, if they are not healthy, my health and my sustainability is a problem in itself. So as you can see, it's an indication, it's an initial indication of the emerging political economy. Of course, the issue, as after each crisis, while we expect certain changes to happen, unfortunately, immediately after the crisis, everyone forgets and goes back to the default. Let's hope that going back to default will not happen this time, but that stoicistic attitude, and as part of the neoliberalism and neoclassic understanding, can at least give way in certain degree that the well-being of an individual is a function of the well-being of other stakeholders and other individuals. And that is very much an early indication of what the political economy nature of the future should be beyond the Islamic one. Because when we look at it from the Islamic perspective anyway, directly this suggests that this human behavior, a particular definition of human, because Islam does not support the idea of stoicism, has never supported. And considering that individuals are considered to be falah individual, in other words, trying to essentialize their own salvation and the salvation in this world and the hereafter, but as a function of how much they can do for the society, to other people, ihsan. So therefore, in Islamic political economy, the individual falah function has always been considered as a function of how much we can make other people's life better off. So the direct linking of different individuals, other individuals' well-being as part of individual well-being as an important determinant of Islamic political economy has always been there. But again, while we were expecting that with the emergence of Islamic finance, with a more ethical, more oriented towards the salvation of all the stakeholders, we expected that the conventional finance moving towards Islamic finance essentials, but unfortunately in the process we ended up Islamic finance converging towards the conventional by giving up this this value system, this moral consequences. Let's hope that after the COVID-19, we should continue to essentialize such qualities of individual human definition of human as an important important early indicators of what the future political economy should be. And therefore, the Islamic political economy has a lot to be able to offer. But that offering, again, as in the case of Islamic finance, should not be forgetting the value system in converging towards maximizing the profit at the expense of the rest. And therefore, looking at this economics that we have been forced into, because while we talk about global political economy, that is capitalism, but at the same time, in particular, we have only one economics, one global, one political economy ruling the entire world, despite the fact that the history was a place where different political economies, different economic understandings prevailed, reflecting the value system of its society. However, with the 20th century, unfortunately, the pluralism in our understanding of what economy, society, politics could be has been relegated to one particular, in which the individual, stoicistic individual, the homo economicus individual have been imposed the rest of the world. And therefore, economics has become the common knowledge, as if it's a value free, and therefore it is available regardless of whatever your value system is. That is the universal truth that has been imposed on us. However, this maximizing individual, that efficiency understanding of economics resulted in capitalism producing the most sophisticated machinery to be able to kill the people, the total population of the world in a second, yet failed to produce even a single mask to protect their own doctors and the health workers. And therefore the asymmetry is clearly in front of us. And that asymmetry is not just a coincidence, but it is a particular political economic choice. Those of you who have done welfare economics, you would remember in your welfare, unfortunately, welfare economics is not taught either in the business schools in the modern times, because we have to be only efficiency oriented learning and teaching, but the welfare economics is always the choice between the butters and the guns, between the bread and the guns. That's very much the moral choice. The economics understanding will give you different frontiers, which are efficient, but when it comes to which one of the frontiers that as a politician, as a society you want to choose, it becomes a moral question. Whether you want to provide more bread or you want to provide more gun. And therefore, when we look at under the current circumstances, the choice has been on the side of providing more guns at the expense of providing more bread. And that political economy therefore has to change, okay? And that change cannot happen the way economics that we understand, the way we understand the global political economy. Therefore, the importance of the emergence of Islamic economics movement since 1940s and 50s. It's a response. It's a response through under the name of Iqtisad, because Iqtisad has entirely different connotation than economics. And therefore, I avoid using economics together with Islam, because Islamic ideals doesn't go together with the economics connotation. Okay, Islam is very much expressed as a political economy of Iqtisad. It refers to justice, it refers to equity, it refers to balance, it refers to equilibrium in the society, the mizan. And therefore, what is the political economy of Islam is very much the justice, very much the equity, very much the balance, very much the equilibrium in a very systematic understanding of the world, rather than just the economics, just the finance as a compartmentalized areas. And therefore, in our imagination, what the political economy of the future would be, one, of course, the current existing system of political economy is not responding to the needs of the societies around the world. It has failed. But also importantly, this economics understanding does not provide us the imagination to constitute new political economies so that these health workers could be provided with the necessary equipment to be able to tackle the challenges created by the COVID-19 and similar crisis. But in a similar way, with the financial crisis, before the financial crisis 2008, and in all economic and financial crisis, banks and financial institutions, when they make money, it is the private gains, it's the corporate success. But when they fail, the government bails them out, and then it becomes what? Social cost to all of us. Somehow when they gain, it is entirely private gain. It is distributed as dividends to their shareholders. But when they fail, then the cost of entire failure on all of us. The taxpayers have to pay for that. And not only that, as a taxpayer, you pay for the bailout of a bank, yet you might owe money to the bank, you might have a loan from a bank, you have to continue to pay that. You see the asymmetries, how the asymmetries that we have created by the existing political economy around us. And therefore, moving into a new political economy, a challenge, taking up this challenge and moving into new structure, new ways of understanding, in particular, the COVID has demonstrated. And therefore, you need a systemic response to be able to tackle with this one. Okay, we might be able to get away again with this crisis, but if we go back to the same practices, rather than essentializing, if we continue to essentialize guns over bread, we will continue to have the same asymmetries created in the system. And therefore, a systemic response is necessary. And that's the political economy in general, but the Islamic political economy in particular. That systemic response necessitates, we cannot divorce the resource allocation with the efficiency understanding, looking at how to maximize the profits for the shareholders of the banks and other financial economic institutions, but what happens, what consequences it produces, and whether those consequences can be acceptable, whether the social costs produced in the system, whether it is taken care by the entire society, imposed on the entire society at the expense of the profits for the corporate sector. And therefore, an Islamic political economy response, directly responding to such matters in a dynamic manner by integrating, by developing a sophisticated system, integrating all these different sectors, the intention together with the consequence, providing that understanding is important for us. And within that understanding, of course, the whole idea of the historical bloc. Islamic economics movement in 1960s therefore emerged as an historical bloc to say, look guys, this is enough, we have to move on, because the way you are commodifying everything, the way you are essentializing guns over bread is not acceptable. So that historical bloc, that intellectual bloc is an important gain for us to be able to develop something new, something different, a new political economy as part of this, the parameters that I have identified for Islamic political economy, as we call it, the justice, the equity, the fairness, the equilibrium in the society, and the balance in the society. And this is very much related with the emergence of the Islamic economic movement. And even when you look at how, for instance, Sayyid Qutb essentialized that with negating the existence in order to create something new. Again, when al-Shariati was referring the tradition, sorry, the narrative between Cain and Abel, again, the same thing, the challenges, okay, capitalists against the non-capitalists and etc. But therefore, the emergence of Islamic political economy is very much in a Polanyian sense, when Polanyi look at the great transformation, how the world unfortunately moved from moral economies into self-regulated market economy, creating this embeddedness in the end, resulting into hegemony of capital determining everything as part of this global political economy, undermine the welfare of human, welfare of environment, welfare of workers, and therefore the situation that we are. And therefore, Polanyi called the social movements to rescue land, labor, even capital from domination. And that is very much the Islamic political economy does not accept any domination, any prioritization of a particular stakeholder, particular factors of production over the others. And therefore the mizan, the balance between different stakeholders, whether it's capital, whether it is the worker, whether it's the environment and etc., establishing that balance in the just manner is the particular discourse of Islamic political economy. To prevent domination, to establish equality and equilibrium between different stakeholders is an essential. And therefore, when we look at, we cannot segregate a certain sector of a society, economy, politics, whatever, from the rest. And therefore, there's a huge lessons for us. Islamic finance movement has been amazing. Islamic banking movement is an amazing. But when you divorce that from Rahmatul Alameen, unfortunately, it becomes a financial solution only. Therefore, that Rahmatul Alameen provides us the political economy of Islam. And therefore, you cannot divorce, for instance, the study of prohibition of interest, prohibition of usury, or the private property that in Islam from the rest of Islam, the rest of the narratives of Islam. So it is general part of the Islamic political economy. They have to be connected. They have to be linked to each other to develop this Islamic political economy. So on the one hand, you have banking, but operates as bank, without considering the particular consequences it produces for the society, even Islamic bank, and therefore how we connect the outcomes expected from Islamic banks to the larger political economy to be that rahmatul alamin, to produce the outcomes that we wanted. And therefore, Islamic economy has to be understood, Islamic finance has to be understood as part of this general system of Islam in order to produce the outcomes that we are expecting. And therefore, these are the initial indications as to what the nature of the political economy that we can create, and in which, rather than essentializing corporates, because Dr. Antonio is here, can explain to us, such as fiqh does not accept the corporation as a third party. Fiqh only deals with real person. So corporation, even within the Islamic understanding, is not an entity for us to consider. And therefore, how we can establish a non-corporation base. And why is that? Because capital domination is not accepted in Islam. Islam is not accumulative oriented and has never been accumulative. The narrative of Islam is not accumulative oriented, and therefore corporation has not emerged as one of the institutions of Islamic political economy historically. That requires accumulation. And therefore, how we can rescue the capital as well, being dominant, because domination is not acceptable. All the stakeholders, all the factors of production has to be in the same line. Unfortunately, time is an issue, but just to finish with reflection, therefore, unfortunately, the partial analysis that has been imposed on us, including our everyday life through the economics, understanding the finance we have, unfortunately, it creates this hybridities, okay? And that hybridity provides, of course, comfort for us, that we have Sharia compliant finance available. Fantastic. It's the end of history for Muslims. No, it is not even the beginning of history. The search for authenticity has to continue to provide the Islamic political economy with its fullness, the systemic response. We cannot just say that because we have Islamic banks, we have finished this history, the end of history. No, because accessibility to resources is an issue. How we are going to create those accessibilities into reality. Using the social media, such as you can see here on the right-hand side of the photograph, some people are in the negative, but on the other hand, you have people are dominating. The capital is dominating. How you are going to solve the problem? With the equality, you won't be able to solve it, because again, when you give everyone the same, you do not solve the problem. So therefore, how equity can resolve the problem. But beyond that, therefore, how we can prevent commodification happens, how everything that we have around us created by Allah, therefore that directly requires accessibility to resources before commodifying them. And when you do not commodify them, when you prevent the commodification to happen, the justice, and therefore everyone has accessibility. And that is very much an important message of Islamic political economy. On the one hand, with the prohibition of interest, the domination of capital removed, brought together the same level with other factors of production. On the other hand, with zakat, the importance of whatever we have around us created by Allah for everyone to have accessibility. Even it is run, even it is as a business provided by the private sector, at the end of the day, the resources used by the private sector belongs to Allah. Therefore, there's a right of the society in that particular production. And therefore, zakat. Zakat is not a charity. It is not an exogenous giving. It is endogenously part of the Islamic modes of production, how the production is taken. The right of the society directly goes together to the production as part of the labor, capital, other stakeholders, as well as the right of society. And therefore that directly recognizes another important factor of the Islamic political economy, that everyone has a right on the resources created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Time is an issue. I know that I have already come to the end of my time. Why I have plenty of things, but I will stop here. Hopefully we can continue with the questions. But I try to give you some indicators, some parameters of the Islamic political economy imagination that can help us to rescue land, environment, human workers, as well as the capital in the process, so that this Rahmatul Alameen as the political economy of Islam can be essentialized. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mehmet, for a very wonderful presentation. Professor Mehmet has given us the imagination of, what should the Islamic political economy be during, in the post-coronavirus world. So many of you I know have lots of questions. Some of you have put that question into the chats. So I would like to also remind our participants who's watching from YouTube, you can also join with us to to chat with our distinguished speakers by putting your question there in YouTube, and then we'll, inshallah ta'ala, if the time allows, deliver that to our distinguished speaker. So now let's moving forward to our next distinguished speaker. Yes, Associate Professor Dr. Joffe Antonio. Apart from his activities in the education sector, Dr. Joffe also serves as Sharia scholars for many Islamic financial institutions, including the Islamic Financial Service Board, IFSB, and Islamic Development Bank, IDB. Dr. Joffe earned a Bachelor of Arts in Islamic Studies major and Economics and Statistics minor from the University of Jordan. He continued his study in Master of Economics at International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, and then he earned PhD in microfinance from the University of Melbourne, Australia. He has lots of publications as well. Among the highest cited one in Google Scholars is the Islamic Bank from Theory to Practice and Encyclopedia of Muhammad, the Super Leader, Super Manager. Dr. Joffe Antonio, the room is yours, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah mustafa wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ahli sidqi wal wafa amma ba'd. First of all, let's be pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his blessing and mercy to us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, it is a great pleasure to see Professor Mehmet again, as well as Dr. Eddie and the rest of participants wherever you are all over the world. Alhamdulillah, it is a great pleasure to be here and to share some ideas regarding how Islamic economy and finance responding to COVID-19 and the new normal. Alhamdulillah, we have a lot of new insight from Pak Edi and Professor Mehmet. I don't like to repeat. Maybe I would like to stress some important point within limited time, about maybe 70 to 20 minutes. And then we will focus on discussion, inshallah. Let's share my thought as follows. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is Islamic political economy and finance in the post-coronavirus world, challenges and opportunities. I have to say that COVID is a new push for more creative and consolidation. New push and to think about new ideas about digital economy and consolidation among the Muslim Ummah, from Morocco to Merauke. Okay, that is the Muslim Ummah. And then, yes, I just would like to go fast on this idea. We have so many figures that global economy has been affected very seriously by COVID-19, from -1 to -2 to prediction of -5, with different number for different countries all over the world. But in general, will be negative growth in the 2000 and 2020 or 2021. Okay, so many sector affected, starting from the lowest one, like consumers, electronic and semiconductor, because in lockdown period, we communicate a lot through Zoom, through WebEx, through Microsoft Teams, and etc. And then the consumption of electronic is higher. Consumer good, the more we stay at home, the more we eat. Automotive also very slow because we move very small. And then oil and gas quite moderate. And tourism and aviation, it is the hit most by coronavirus. So that is the area. When we are talking about Islamic finance, of course, we have to link the finance to the real sectors. Of course, a lot of figures regarding the countries that affected by this coronavirus. Okay, and then we will see the OIC countries quite differ in terms of the effect. Okay, we have Turkey up to Brunei. It is about 12 countries you can see here. And then when we are talking about Sukuk, also affected very serious, particularly in March, and try to rebound in April, and we hope we'll go back in June and July. It is in December 19 up to April 2020. Okay, we hope we'll go back, inshallah. Then when we see also the equity, okay, so infected very serious in this area. Okay, starting from Malaysian KLCI up to Indonesia Composite Index, Bursa Istanbul, etc., are running negative. Okay, so in general, we are facing difficult economic situation. I just have a chat with Prof. Mehmet Asutai regarding Turkish economy. It is, yes, very difficult, and Turkish tried to have a swap with Qatar, to have swap with China. Indonesia also, rupiah also deflated very seriously against dollar. Okay, in order to have a strong position in confronting COVID-19, we have to possess a very solid philosophical foundation. Al-Mabda al-Qawi, Al-Mabda al-Asasi, Al-Matin. Okay, so we have to synergize with the spirit of one ummah, because this coronavirus is in 200 more countries, but no exception, including the OIC countries, including Indonesia, Turkey, Malaysia, Brunei, Algeria, Nigeria, MashaAllah, Tunisia, and Morocco, and the rest of the world. So, inna hadihi ummatukum ummatan wahida wa ana rabbukum fa'budun. Verily, this nation of yours is one single nation, and I'm your Lord. So, worship me. So, one single ummah, it will make us strong. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we have OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Then we have to think about OIC countries incorporated. So right now we are thinking and we are cooperating differently. If we combine from Morocco to Tunisia to Algeria to Libya to Egypt to Saudi Arabia to Oman, Yemen, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Malaysia until Indonesia, when we blend together, compared to our cooperation with China, for instance, we will see the figure is not encouraging. So our cooperation among Muslim countries is very much less compared to our cooperation with China. Number two, nata'awanu fima ittafaqna alayhi wa na'dhiru ba'duna ba'dan fima ikhtalafna fi. So finding the meeting point and interest and forget the differences. I have to mention about Saudi Arabia and Qatar, for instance. It is very difficult position between these two. I have to mention between Yemen and Emirates, for instance. It is difficult position. And I have to mention the communication between Egypt and Turkey. It is also in difficult situation. So the spirit of finding the meeting point and interest and forgetting the differences is very much important in our political economy. So it is the idea of how we have to move it forward regarding the cooperation. And then, of course, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentioned wala takunu kallazina tafarraqu wa ikhtalafu min ba'di ma ja'ahumul bayinat wa ulaika lahum adzabun adzim. Okay, it is still the spirit. And then when we see the contribution and the growth and cooperation among Muslim countries, okay, we will see, yes, Indonesia is okay, also Egypt, Pakistan, Turkey, and then we have Iran here. But the production of the Muslim Ummah is still far behind the rest of the developing countries. Okay. The next idea that we have to focus on is dynamic closed-loop cooperation among OIC member countries. وَتَعَوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. This is our very serious duty to cooperate among OIC member countries. When we see, for instance, here, the OIC countries, gross domestic product, we see only 8.2% compared to developed country, about 60%. And then the non-OIC developing countries about 31.6, mashallah. We are consuming more than what we produce, okay, unfortunately. So we depend on others for our food, for our vehicles, for our telecommunication, and don't say about military and satellite and telecommunication. Mashallah, we rely on them a lot. Okay, so when we see also the top 10 OIC countries by GDP, we will see like this. It is very important. One of the political economy that we have to stress is burning the gira, buying from Muslim products as much as possible. Muslims should produce more products globally. And then we have to invest in Sharia Islamic financial institution owned by Muslim, because right now so many Sharia financial institution but owned by non-Muslim. And then we have to sell to the world more. Yes, it is our gira. Sometimes we find that the shop next to us is belong to others, and then we find the Muslim shop is in our opposites, but we choose the non-Muslim shop because maybe relatively cheaper and better service. Yes, we will not be able to develop our shops, the Muslim shop, unless we participate. So it is the thing that we have to promote altogether. Rasulullah SAW in his hadith, "Hada sukukum fala yuntaqadna wala yudrabna alayhi kharaj." This is your market. It will always be your market, and do not duty will be levy on it. Okay, and no duty will be levy on it. So Rasulullah SAW encouraged the Muslim market to be active, and then put the tax and put the zakat at the end after the transaction. MashaAllah. Okay, so this is the trade. Among the Muslim countries, we have top exporters and then importers, but don't be surprised, Saudi Arabia is a top exporter for one single commodity, it is oil. And then don't be surprised, Indonesia also quite good, but for raw material. And then we see United Arab Emirates among the top, but it is a reseller or drop shipper to be perfect. They import from all over the world and then re-export to African countries or re-export to Arab countries, and nothing produced by United Emirates Arab except tourism. Okay, so yes, exports a lot, but then when we try to find the details of the figure, we will see it is not the real one. I don't like to go for the details of numbers. Okay, yes, we have a strategic role of Islamic finance. Then we can utilize this strategic function to fight against COVID-19 and to see the new era of our economy. Alhamdulillah, we have banking, we have capital market, we have Islamic money market, we have non-banking financial institutions. We have so many Sharia products in here. At the same time, we have also social financial institution like Baitul Mal, Zakat institution, Wakaf institution, and Sharia microfinance. So we blended, we have commercial and social. So the combination between social and commercial make Islamic financial system is very strong. Okay, people with the business, they might go to bank, they might go to capital market, they can transact in money markets, and then maybe they might go to a finance company or venture capital or pawn shop or takaful. But people in need, they might go to wakaf, they might go to zakat, and then might go to small microfinance institution. And alhamdulillah, even today, we can develop wakaf as well as zakat for productive purposes, alhamdulillah. So even social, we can make it also commercial. Okay, here is the new normal, new transformation. New normal, new transformation, yes. Number one, it is the conceptual one. In Rajab and Sha'ban, yes, we have Corona until Ramadan maybe, but in Shawwal, we hope we can ease some effect of Corona. We have special push during Ramadan, and then we hope that we can move forward our financial performance, and then we can move also our emotional aspect. We can increase the level of the Muslim Ummah social harmony. We have to be more healthy because there is a saying, health is not everything, but everything is impossible without health. And then we have to increase our competency. We have to increase our skill. We have to increase our knowledge in terms of intellectual. And then, of course, spiritually, we have to get closer to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So hopefully by Shawwal, we have to process what I call it newborn personality, newborn Muslim. After one full month of Ramadan, we have so many activities and so many exercise. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala wanted us to be a new person in Shawwal. New person not only in terms of spiritual and emotional, but new person in terms of finance. We have to get better after Ramadan. Okay, in terms of intellectual as well, we have to be better in Shawwal. Why it is called Shawwal? Shawwal in Arabic means something increase, something develop, something move up. Okay, when our condition, financial, emotional, social, physical, intellectual, and spiritual aspect remain the same, meaning we are not coming into Shawwal. We still not yet coming to Shawwal, mashallah. Okay, to be quick, yes, we have to transform from simple economy to digital economy because everything right now is digital. The one who keep in traditional economy will left behind. Okay, only the one who embrace digital economy can survive today. Because one of the different characteristics of COVID-19 economic crisis, the buyer and the seller cannot meet in the market. The buyer and the seller cannot meet in the table. We have to use another form of meeting, including today, we use Zoom. Including today, we can receive the food by online transporters, alhamdulillah. So this is the time for Muslim Ummah to shift from traditional simple economy to the digital economy. That's why everything related to communication, everything related to programming, everything related to digital is a future for Muslim economic and finance. Number two, last time we are only thinking about commerce, but today we have to think more on health, okay? But it is also opportunity for us. We have to think about more healthy-oriented products, okay? Alhamdulillah, Rasulullah SAW teaches us about how to be healthy, how to exercise, how to make a kind of sports, alima auladakum bisibaha warimaya warikabil khuyul, as well as Rasulullah SAW doing detox by fasting Isnin or Khamis. Rasulullah SAW fasting Ayamul Bid. Some of us also fasting Dawood, mashallah, also teaches about also running and walking. It is part of the sport. Number three, yeah, it is our purpose, how to move from capitalist and conventional into sharing and Sharia. Of course, this is our job as the student of Islam economics and finance to invite more and more entrepreneurs, to invite more and more students, to invite more and more businessmen, to invite more and more government officers to think about sharing and Sharia. Yeah, and then to convince the bank to convert into Islamic. Alhamdulillah, I have an honor to transform about 17 banks in Indonesia from conventional into Islamic. Alhamdulillah, I have an honor to teach about 35,000 Indonesian bankers about Islamic banking, and maybe hundreds of thousands of students in Islamic universities about Islamic economic and finance. But it is not enough. In Indonesia, we still less than 6% of Islamic finance, so 94% ahead. We have to move. Last time we are so many. We emphasize so much on larger corporation, and then it is time today we have to think about small and micro enterprises, because it is the engine, the real engine of economy all over the world, not only in Indonesia, but also in the rest of OIC Muslim countries. The micro in Indonesia, we have about 63 million. The small is 83,000, the medium maybe only 60,000, okay? And the large corporation is only 5,000. So in terms of labor, we can see here, in terms of labor, the micro can absorb about 98.6% of the total labor in Indonesia, while the small is only 1.2, and medium 0.09, and larger corporation absorb only 0.01% of the total labor in Indonesia. So we indebted a lot to micro, okay? We can see here the number, sorry, this one, and the labor is about 89 in micro. MashaAllah, they contribute also quite significant to the GDP of the country, about 37, okay, almost similar to the larger corporation. The number 5, it is very long subject, of course. We are talking about the fiat money against a stable currency of dinar, okay. I cannot speak freely here because of the time. But yes, it is our long concerns about how we can put our wealth, how we can put our fruits of income in our money, because today we are working very hard from 8 to 5, sometimes 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, and then we entrust our work and our saving in rupiah. But mashallah, rupiah is deflated over a period. Okay, it is not because we are not performing Salatul Duha, it is not because we are lazy, but the money itself is not strong enough. When we compare about the rupiah and gold, for instance, over 20 years, we can see the movement from 2 million up to 20 million over 20 years. So almost double every single year, mashallah. It is the price of gold per ounce over 20 years. Okay, and then it is our job as well to have to convince ourselves, to convince our friend to be more saving and investment and less spending. Of course, Rasulullah SAW very much concerned about iddikhar and very much concerned about investment. We have so many methods on this. 50% goes to your needs, 30% goes to your want, and 20% goes to your investment. But if I might suggest, maybe 50% to your needs and enough 20% for your want, then we invest 30%. It will be more better if you invest 40% and then you give only 10% for your want, and then you cover your needs by 50%. It is depend on our lifestyle, because your lifestyle determine your saving, and your saving determine your investment. So in other words, your lifestyle determine your investment capacity. I have to repeat, your lifestyle of changing mobile phone, your lifestyle of dressing branded labels, your lifestyle of hanging around in the mall, your lifestyle of eating too frequently in the expensive restaurant will reduce your capacity to save. When your capacity to save is small, meaning your investment capacity also small, mashallah. So your lifestyle determine your saving, and your saving determine your investment capacity. Finally, of course, we have to export more and maximize local market, and then we have to import less. It is time for Muslim Ummah all over the world, including Indonesia, how we can self-reliance on our food. Unfortunately, today, when we talk about fruits in Indonesia, for instance, it is mango from Bangkok, durian from Bangkok, and then we are talking about papaya, also from Bangkok. Mashallah, almost everything is from Bangkok. And then we import the vegetables from China. I have to stop by this point to allow more discussion, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Joffe Antonio, for very inspiring presentation. So, Dr. Joffe emphasizes on in the first in the first part of his presentation, emphasizing on the role of the solidarity in this this development of Islamic economics and finance. And it relates to what Professor Mehmet has said, that we need to really have a new paradigm of Islamic political economy. So thank you very much again. So we already have lots of questions for both our distinguished speakers. So I would like to probably ask in the first term 3 questions for each speaker simultaneously, so we can actually save the time. So first of all, for Professor Mehmet, there are many who questioning about do you agree that this COVID-19 pandemic make a rebalancing power between the advanced economy and the emerging economy, and then how actually the Islamic political economy can help to move the current practice of Islamic finance and banking into the more desired way? That is the first question. The second one is probably a little bit specific about the social corporate social responsibility. Do you think that corporate social responsibility in a way is the reflection of rights Islamic political economy, like probably the correction mechanism in the practice of what happening today? That is the second question. The third one is, what about the assumption of Homo Islamicus? Because in Islamic political economy, we have that assumption, and it is fair to say that we can also expect non-Muslim to have that kind of criteria, because in practice we have actually interaction closely with them in terms of economy and finance. Probably that is for Professor Mehmet. If you please can answer now.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum again. It is important. The global political economic question is an important question, stands in front of us. The 1979 Washington Consensus was the last train to catch the capitalist economy all over the world. And therefore, in 1979, it was imposed on the rest of the world to implement these neoliberal policies, which had terrible consequences for the developing world, including the Muslim world. And therefore, because it was a very difficult prescription, it was implemented under military regimes or the dictatorial regimes in most of the developing countries. Because it has forced the countries to move from their social formation, the existing social formation, into very much capital-oriented social formation. Now, this question is, the issue is that we all settled down into these neoliberal policies. The neoliberal policies, unfortunately, are not questioned. When I look at the debates in the Muslim world, including when I look at the debate within the Islamic finance, the neoliberal policies are not questioned, because neoliberal policies unfortunately constitute the base, including for Islamic finance. And therefore, there has to be an awareness of the issues that we have around us. We have secluded ourselves into very much the end of history nostalgia of the Islamic finance being the end of history. However, it is not, and the problems are not stopping around us. As I mentioned, global financial crisis, health crisis, COVID, and now in the Western part of the world, in particular in the United States, you have the Black Lives Matter. And each one of them has very much the economics issues, these neoliberal policies at the heart in creating such problems. Now, in the world, there has to be a new call for the global political economy to change, but at the same time, within each Muslim country, and even in our civil societies, there has to be an urge to look at different ways of organizing societies. Because this current ways of organizing around efficiency is not creating the, is not allowing us to reflect on the value system that we have. We have been doing just a patching up, okay? And therefore, when the Islamic banking in 1990s, 70s, from 70s to 1990s, we thought that Islamic banking will bring the salvation, and it did not, because it works within the same parameters of the neoliberalism. And therefore, in countries such as Indonesia now, a lot of people have been putting efforts professionally as well as academically on zakat and waqf, okay? Because these are the very much the value system of Islam and how we can use zakat and waqf to rescue. And therefore, there has to be questioning in particular among the young people of the existing structures, the failure of the existing structures, the systematic problems created by the existing structures. These are important questions that we have to raise. The civil society has to move, suggesting that things are not right. You have environmental crisis, you have human crisis, you have health crisis, you have economic crisis, you have financial crisis around us. So therefore, we have to be able to aware of and respond to those. Now, the global political economy, the existing political economy, does not allow you to emerge as an alternative discourse. As I mentioned, the emergence of Islamic economics emerged as a counter-hegemony to say that, look, there are different ways of organizing society, different ways of allocating resources in the economy and society. However, global political economy, of course, did not allow. When I approached the founding fathers, why they opted for a commercial Islamic banking rather than social banking, for instance. And their response was that, look, it was 1970s. In 1970s, you couldn't go to any leaders in the Muslim world and saying that, look, we want to create entirely alternative ways of doing this. So that was not possible, and it did not happen, unfortunately, therefore, because the political economy did not allow. The political economy that we have around us as well, unfortunately, is not going to allow. It allows only when you work with their parameters. And therefore, Islamic banking is possible because it fits into the parameters of the existing political economy. And without that convergence, it doesn't help you to move on. And therefore, I'm not being despondent. I'm not saying that change is not possible, but it is very difficult. And therefore, it requires effort. Academics, students, researchers, professionals, policymakers, politicians, we have to work together to prepare the parameters of this political economy to go forward. Because Islamic banking emerged as a quick response to the particular problem. So it wasn't settled down to emerge as an institution. So how we can therefore, being innovative within the Islamic political economy, come up with the necessary institutions, including financing institutions to respond to the particular problems that we face in the Muslim world, such as Dr. Antonio shared the data about SMEs and the huge contribution of SMEs to the Indonesian economy, 35% he mentioned, if I'm not mistaken. So if this is your largest segment in terms of generating value added, in terms of generating job opportunities, then how Islamic finance can be generated within such parameters to directly go and contribute to the SME sector and the development of that sector. But when you look at, for instance, trends where Islamic banks and financial institutions are investing, they are investing in heavily real estate and the financial market as the others. And therefore, the parameter has to change. And in order to change that parameter, of course, we have to identify our political economy. We have accepted that, for instance, Islamic banks have to fit into Basel III now. But we have never asked the question, what is Basel? What is the jurisdiction of Basel? why we have to follow the Basel, because the more you follow, the more you have to lose from your value system to move into entirely a neoliberal banking understanding. And when you look at who is Basel, some professional bankers, they came together, they established an institution called Basel, and they started issuing standards. What is the objective? For what purpose? It's entirely capital movement and facilitating capital movement. And then we are saying that we are alternative system, but we follow entirely standards provided, a particular regulative environment provided by entirely private individuals, bankers, and we have to follow that. And in order to do that, you have to go to the risk management. And those risk management issues such as you cannot finance SMEs. Okay, you cannot do startups because they are very risky and it will affect you. So therefore, the paradigm has to shift to look into what are our priorities and whether we can constitute a particular political economy and operate within our own political economies. That is not possible. I'm not saying that's not possible, but it requires efforts. It requires a particular effort from academics, researchers, civil society, policymakers to put together a particular proposal rather than a piecemeal solution to make Islamic finance possible. And therefore, it is important that that should happen. And therefore, within that also the second question about Islamic finance, therefore, I try to identify that Islamic finance has to reflect on its own value system rather than being expressed through the value system of neoliberalism. Okay, such as the certain practices that we have in Islamic banking and finance, which are considered rather unacceptable under normal circumstances, but because market condition forces it, then it becomes acceptable. Such as this famous debate, just an example, there are plenty, but such as the organized tower, Islamic Fiqh Academy, the Oecd, as I mentioned by Dr. Antonio, Oecd, part of the Oecd or the International Fiqh Academy, suggests that organized tower is not acceptable, it is not halal, but then each individual Islamic bank with their Sharia board, they make it halal. What are the motivation for that? What are the motivations for that? It is entirely market conditions. So market conditions over the conditions of fiqh. So fiqh condition goes back to the value system of Islam, Islamic value system versus the market value system. Which prevails? In the end, the market conditions prevails. Market forces us. And therefore, but the problem is that if the market is constituted within the value system of Islam, then you do not have problem. But the market is constituted and it is operating under the conditions of neoliberalism, which does not recognize your value system. And therefore, Islamic banks and financial institutions, rather than considering themselves as part of the hybridity in terms of providing hybrid products, in terms of being hybrid institutions, they have to realize that the original promise of being rescuing human, rescuing labor, rescuing capital, rescuing environment, and etc. And therefore, it's an alternative. It's not alternative to the banks. Should locate itself, should position itself as alternative to the system that we have around us. So that's important. And therefore, looking at the other practices, CSR, SDGs, and others, yes, these are positive, but these are patching process, patching in the failure. Those of you have done microeconomics, you will start perfect market economy, and immediately you move into failures. So failures in the system. What are those failures? Therefore, you have public goods. Therefore, you have regulation. Therefore, you have et cetera, et cetera. The perfect market economy doesn't work, and therefore you have to create patching process to overcome the failures. So CSR, SDGs, and etc. is a total recognition that the system doesn't work, and therefore how it can be patched up. It's a positive thing, but it is an exogenous process. However, what we are saying that the whole modes of production, the whole social formation, have to organize the society, have to organize the resources from the beginning, from the modes of production side, has to be properly organized And therefore, what you have is such patching process would not be necessarily as much as we have around us. And therefore, unfortunately, having Islamic banks and expecting Islamic banks to the CSR, and not only, unfortunately, not doing enough even in that, it is a shame, to be honest, because by definition, in the initial equation, Islamic banks by definition should be producing such social results at the same time, because they cannot be divorced from operating within the economy, within the Islamic political economy, to provide such results. And therefore, the definition of human, we have referred to Homo economicus, or stoicistic individual, an individual that considers only well-being of himself or herself. But however, as we have seen in COVID-19, and individuals just protecting themselves is not enough. You might protect yourself, but unless other people are protected, you are susceptible to coronavirus as well. So therefore, directly the consequence, one of the consequences of coronavirus is the particular definition of human. That definition of human, with my ontological position, I can define as the falah individual doing ihsan. Different ontologies would define in a different ways. That's possible. But what is important, the morality of that individual, whether that's an Islamic morality, whether that's a Buddhist morality, whether it's the Hindu morality, whether it's the Christian morality, and etc. But at the core of that, the morality of individual, the solidarity of that individual to be able to link to others. Because any morality that we have around us is of course, is a huge response to the Homo stoicistic nature of Homo economicus. Homo economicus entirely stripped of any moral values, just trying to maximize and resulting in the conditions that we have around us. And therefore, our definition of human, as if we want to choose the if we want to choose the word Homo Islamicus, in terms of the consequences that we refer, is not different than any other moral. Therefore, referring to this Homo Islamicus is not an exclusive idea, because what brings together with different tradition is the particular consequences that we are looking into. Those moralities of different moralities, the plurality of moralities, each one of them wants to produce this moral individual, but through their own ways. And therefore, rather than just focusing on the form, yes, it is important. We have to look at the form, but the consequence is important. When we look at the consequence, in the consequence, we can get together with all those moralities, as long as morality is essentialized. So therefore, each morality would produce the similar results, similar outcomes. And when it comes to the outcomes, we are agreeing on the outcomes, while we might be different in the producers in producing, in the processes in producing such outcomes. Therefore, referring to Homo Islamicus is not an exclusivist understanding when we take into account the consequences. And the consequences, we can all agree as our objective function. I think that's all I want to say at this stage. And just want to say thank you, because at 12 o'clock I have another meeting, so I might leave in the middle before we finish. Of course, I'll wait until 12. But just in case, if I don't have any chance, just to say thank you very much for organizing this one and giving me the opportunity to online in a virtual manner to meet a huge number of people out there. As I love visiting Indonesia, and this year it seems that it's not going to be possible. But salam to everyone, and I can see the Dharmites as well, some Dharmites on the list. Salam to all Dharmites as well, but I'll be staying around until 12, just in case if I move. Again, thank you very much for everyone. And it's good to see you.
Thank you
Dr.
very
Joffe
much, Professor.
Antonio.
Thank you very much, Professor. It is our pleasure to be welcoming you here, actually. So we understand that in Indonesia now it's also the time for Maghrib, but because there are many questions coming from the participants asking to the second speaker as well, Professor Joffe Antonio, I would like to just raise two questions for Professor Joffe Antonio. The first one is how actually, because you are part of the Sharia scholars across the Islamic financial institution, how actually the discussion or how actually the efforts that Sharia scholars have been doing in incorporating the morality of in incorporating the Islamic political economy into the process of for instance the product development process in the Islamic financial institutions. That is the first one. And then the second one is it's a little bit technical. How do you think to search and grow the agriculture and plantation in Indonesia using the scheme from Islamic finance itself? Because we know that many area in plantation is still untouched. One of them is because the lack of financing. The time is yours, Prof.
Ensure the market and how to ensure the pricing is attractive enough for the farmers and good enough for the buyers. Okay, and then we have to encourage the economic skills of the farmer and the adoption of the modern technology. What happened in Indonesia, we don't have any certain target of if I may say, the economic development, the agriculture development target. For instance, we have to be self-sufficient in rice by year 2025. We have to be sufficient in corn by 2027. And then the government mobilize every energy and every institution and every PEMDA or local government to achieve this national target. Until now, everyone is planting, everyone is putting the rice, but we don't know up to which level in 2025 we are reaching. And what is the target of sugar industry, for instance? And what is the target of rice industry? Okay. So the national strategy, including financing, the national strategy, including the fertilizer, as well as the acquisition of land is really challenging. So the farmer in Indonesia is struggling by themselves. Maybe we have to learn from Thailand by opening the market. And then we have to learn also from South Korea, for instance, regarding and South Korea as well as Japan, one village, one product, one village, OVO. Okay, and this was adopted in South Korea, and as well as adopted in Thailand, one product in one village. Of course, as far as the Islamic finance is concerned, it is very easy to finance the agriculture. Okay, we have so many schemes, but the problem is how to ensure the market and how to ensure the pricing. Okay, it is my response to the second question. And if you allow me to respond to the question of number one, and maybe the potential question, I have some suggestion which is left about 5 slides, but it is will answer your potential question. Okay, because time is concerning right now. Political will as the key success factors. Okay, so political will is the key success factors for the so many issues in the countries. Okay, we have to put more Islamic instrument in government macroeconomic policy, including fiscal policy. For instance, the adoption of sovereign sukuk, as well as the adoption of certain criteria in monetary instruments. Fiscal policy under Ministry of Finance and monetary policy under Bank Indonesia or the Central Bank. Okay, the more we have Islamic instruments, the more effective will be the Islamic finance industry. Okay, this is number one. The number two, okay, more government spending allocation via Islamic finance institution. Maybe you will ask question, how to develop, how to grow Islamic finance institution faster. The reason is to allocate the national spending, the government spending through Islamic banks. Let's say government of Pakistan determine about 20% of national spending should go through Islamic bank. In Indonesia, APBN, let's say 20% should go through Islamic bank and BPRS. Inshallah, the BPRS, then the Islamic Commercial Bank will flourish. Okay, because we have liquidity, because that is mandatory for every single bank to channel the government spending. MashaAllah. It is return to the political will. Do we have political will to do this or not? Alhamdulillah, we start after so many years of struggling, but the number is not enough yet. As well as like this, if we are talking about government-linked companies, or we call it BUMN, that is good if we have a policy. The fundraising in BUMN, let's say 10% or 15% should be through sukuk. Okay, but it is a compulsory for every single BUMN in Indonesia. If they go to the bank, should be Islamic bank. If they go to capital market, should be through Islamic financial institution instrument. Otherwise, they violate the instruction from the central government. So it is more affirmative policy on the fundraising as well. And then, creating new demand for Islamic finance, because right now, Alhamdulillah, the supply is more than enough. We have so many commercial bank, we have so many regional bank, we have so many BPRAs, we have so many BMTs, but the customer is limited. The funding customer is limited. That's why liquidity is problem. As well as the good customer who come to the bank is not the first level, the first class customer. If they fail in conventional bank, then they go to Islamic bank. So more advertisement is needed, but who will finance the advertisement? Because the promotion on TV is very expensive. Even in social media is not cheap. Whereas BMT cannot go for social media too heavily. They don't have budget. So the suggestion is, in the, let's say, in these 5 years, government have to spend. Bank Indonesia, Oecd, Departemen Keuangan have to spend some advertisement budget until the industry, let's say, reach 10%, reach 15%, 20%, good number, and then the industry will finance for their own advertisement. So it is the real concrete political will if we are talking about the political economy tonight or this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joffe Antonio, for a very wonderful explanation about the question, the answer of the question. So this is unfortunately the end of our seminar. We are very grateful to have again our distinguished speakers from Mr. Eddie, and then Professor Mehmet, as well as Professor Joffe Antonio. For our participants, please do not forget to fulfill the e-attendance in order to get the certificate if you wish so. And then the recorder of this webinar will be there in MES United Kingdom YouTube channel, so you can just access there, just access to the MES UK channel. Thank you very much again for being with us for these two hours. I know Indonesia is now already Maghrib. I would end this webinar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for everyone. Yes, I mentioned before, if you have any comments and then further explanation, you might follow my Instagram at Joffe Antonio. Inshallah, we reply to you. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Professor Shafi. Assalamualaikum.
Shafi'i, thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah.